the reason I wanted to jump in next is because mine is linked to Concord, but wasn't Concord, and that was actually PlayStation in general in 2024. I think for some of the high points with like Astrobot
Final Fantasy.
and some of the third party deals that they had with Final Fantasy and even second party with Stellar Blade. I think this was a year of change, a year of learning, and a year of somewhat failure, right? That they need to come back from. And I put together a bit of a list when I was kind of sitting down and going, all right, how can I justify this, right? Right, you know, it's not justify, but how can I explain my reasons as to why I feel that they're a bit of a shit show in this year, right? And this is coming off.
For you. Lego Horizon Adventures.
Yeah. And there is a lot of reasons, right? And the reason why I wanted to write this list down, it's like we literally just came off the Game Year Awards where Helldivers and Astrobot swept a lot of the awards. You look at the Game of the Year nominees and Final Fantasy, Astrobot, Black Myth Wukong were all exclusive to the console, whether that was for reasons or not, they were. And yeah, how do you what does that mean when you say they've had a bad year? So where my mind goes to that point, and some of these things you can see across the board and across the industry, but starting off in I think February, Sony laid off 900 employees, and this affected studios like Firesprite, Insomniac, Naughty Dog, and Guerrilla Games. They cancelled and closed London studios who were working on one of their games as a service. You look at what happened to Bungie and that acquisition, right? That bundled, the acquisition of Bungie, which we saw a complete tear down and restructure of that studio, who were also affected by layoffs, who also then had another round of layoffs where Sony took some of that team internal as PlayStation Studios, seemingly taken over the board, and is now attempting to fix the team that they purchased to help their teams, right? You look at studio closures across the board. So, we touched on London studios. We spoke about Concord and Firewalk Studios closing down this year. Neon Koi, which was previously called Savage Games, which is Sony's mobile phone developer, was also closed. We saw the cancellation of Deviation Games and the closure of that studio, which is a second-party production, but was still announcement made by PlayStation. Look at PlayStation VR 2, which I think after March this year was reported that they stopped production after low sales of the unit. It seemed like they cut funding for VR. We saw a lack of real first-party push beyond the Horizon VR game. So all these things coming together, speaking of Naughty Dog, the cancellation of Last of Us Factions, the list goes on. So for the amount of highs and the amount of excitement that I have for the brand, for me as someone who spends a lot of time playing and listening and learning and watching what PlayStation does in particular as my hardware of choice, I sat back and said, well, as great as Hellblade, as great as Helldivers
was great. Shut up.
Hellblade, as great as Helldivers was, and as great as Astrobot is, it was a quiet year from first party. We still don't have the showcase that announced everything on top of everything else that I kind of laid out. So I know I've covered a lot. I just wanted to get everything out in one hit so I didn't forget anything. But Vinny and Sean, you mentioned you also had some thoughts as to some of the things PlayStation have done and that could have done better. Sean, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on that pick and your thoughts on the situation itself?
Yeah, it's funny because we're talking about when we're looking at PlayStation and Xbox and doing a comparison, which everybody loves to do. We shouldn't, but everyone loves to do. PlayStation's still ahead.
Yeah, really. Regardless of everything I've just said, it is true. But,
right?
Yeah.
Like it's like when you're looking at the Australian cricket team. Steve Smith's in the worst batting slump of his entire life, but his current average is better than the other top three batsmen, like for their entire careers.
Yeah.
Like that, it's like the best in the world is still best in the world, but the margin's just that little bit smaller. I think the biggest thing that PlayStation really slipped on for me personally is the VR.
Yeah,
Because
I remember you mentioning that.
I was an early adopter. I've still got it here. I think there's so much that they can do. Yeah, you could say the same thing with like Xbox when they had Kinect and you know, PlayStation iToy and all this.
But this was a lot more expensive.
This is a lot more expensive, right?
Yeah.
This is the same cost as another console, basically. And it's something that I've really wanted to spend more time playing. But I've found like every time I'm looking at, okay, well, what games are coming out? It's always, okay, third-party indie titles, which not taking anything away from them. But where is the support that PlayStation promised for first-party titles besides Horizon? We got the Star Wars like Galaxies one, like which was $120 at launch, by the way. Still $120, I'm pretty sure. I don't think it's come down in price, and that's digital. So, like, what is PlayStation doing? Are they going to have a Last of Us one? Are they going to have a God of War one? Are they going to have like? Do we have to rely on this Batman Shadow?
Yeah,
like Arkham Shadow. Like,
and that's not even on PlayStation VR. That's just a MetaQuest exclusive.
No, the best thing about the PlayStation VR this year is the fact that you can now get a cable and plug it up to your PC.
Yeah, and I think they're working with Apple to use their controllers for the Apple.
Yeah, but why?
Because they're like, we
need
to make
more games.
Someone needs to use these things.
What's the point of the hardware if you don't have anything to play on?
What's your thoughts on, like, I remember when VR2 was being spoken about, they kind of alluded to the fact that there wouldn't be VR games, that games would just kind of, similar to like, you know, how the Xbox handheld or the PlayStation handheld's not going to have a separate library of games. It's probably just going to be the same games running on it. Like, I would have thought a solution, which may not be possible. I'm not a developer or an architect or a engineer, but the idea of like having a VR, not a VR version of the games, which is possible. Capcom did a really good job with the Resident Evil games, getting those running in VR and having them be their own experience, but still being the game and working really well. Similar to that, having, versions of particularly first and second party games running in VR. And what I mean by that is like not playing Stellar Blade and you're literally like in Eve's view and you can look down at your breasts, but more in the sense of like still playing it as a third person action game, but somehow being more in the world. You know what I mean? Maybe your field of view is bigger, the way that you can interact with cutscenes, just making it so that, all right, you're not getting, because I get your point, there should be VR games and there needs to be support for it, but at least at a minimum, if you have the headset and Sean wants to pick up and play Last of Us, which he should, he can at least play it in a way that's going to be like super immersive, right? And have your 3D audio, the dual, your vibration and all that stuff going on, but also just being able to play any game and have it work in some way, I thought would have been an interesting solution, which still would have made a problem that you spent, $750 plus on something that you could just not need or use.
I can see where you're coming from. Like, on the one hand, you've got some games that do have a VR version. So, for example, Drive Club got a VR version.
Yeah.
Even No Man's Sky.
Gran Turismo's got it. Yeah.
Yeah, Gran Turismo's got it. So, I think when you're looking at a game like Last of Us, for example, or even Horizon, it's not about incorporating VR as VR. It could be a case of you're using the controller, but instead of like the first VR, so the first PlayStation VR for the PS4, but when you played VR and you were playing a regular game, it looked like you were looking at this big IMAX screen.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that was it. But if you really wanted to put it that extra edge for the VR2, which it has the capacity for because you don't have to worry about a camera in front of the TV, you're playing the game, but instead of looking at the TV and you say you're third person, there's a camera that encompasses all around you. Yeah. So you're still turning the character and playing and all that sort of stuff, but you can literally look over your shoulder and you can see an enemy back here, and then you can turn around with the character and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, you get a little bit of vertigo, I guess, because...
Yeah, and that will involve a lot of, that will involve the team rendering the world in a way that it's there. Because most games,
Correct.
we saw it. I think when
it's in the cone
in the
front of
cone,
you,
and then when you turn the cone, like what was there would literally disappear. So I get it. It's not like, oh, just do this and it would work. But I mean, it's something as opposed to like just a complete abandonment.
And that's the big reason why I mentioned VR as well, is because it does feel like they talked up this whole involvement in VR, and with the VR2 they were going to develop games, and they're gonna push this whole thing. But now it feels like they've absolutely pushed it to the side. Oh, we're gonna do a handheld.
Yeah,
I've already said, like, yeah, handheld sounds great, but also you've already got this thing on the shelf.
Yeah, it's done.
What are you doing?
It's done. It's like when they they killed the Vita, and I was like, it's done. There's no coming back.
Yeah, but they could have taken it off the shelf after 2 weeks. Instead, they've let it die. So I'm complaining both ways.
Yeah, exactly. Vinny, what about you? Obviously, we spoke a little bit about VR, but what's your thoughts, I guess, more high level of what PlayStation's done this year, and some of their pitfalls, and what would you do? What would you, I think Vinny, Sean, we discussed, like, if we were the head of the brand, like, what we would do. And we've seen Sony, I think, re-pivot after Concord and a few others to, like, all right, we're going to slow down on this whole games as a service. Obviously, old mate Jim Ryan's no longer running the show, and Herman stepped in. So we are kind of seeing maybe a pivot back to single player, but still also doing multiplayer. But in terms of what you've seen this year, I know you don't primarily play on PlayStation, but you do play. You're across the brand quite well. Like, what do you feel about PlayStation in 2024?
The best I can describe it is it's not really feeling for the players this year. It's felt like for the profits.
Yes. Yes.
That's kind of how it felt. It's just been, hey, this is making us money. Hey, this is not making us money. What are we going to do about it? Let's do something different.
Horizon Remaster. Let's do it.
Yeah. Let's do something that is low, I guess, would you say not low, but yeah, low budget.
Risk.
Low risk. That can just generate some profit. It's that. And it's like, and that's how I feel with Lego Horizon Adventures. Same thing. I'm just like, you're not playing this game. Oh yeah, it's for a different, I guess, market. And it's not that graphically powerful. But at the same time, you're selling someone the same game, but a worse version of it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of how, like, I feel like, yeah, the Horizon Zero Dawn remaster. You know what I mean? Herman
Holster's obviously PlayStation's now like CEO, and he's come from Guerrilla. His past was working at Guerrilla building Horizon. But this frustrates me to no end. The
remaster?
No, the obsession with Horizon. Like, I think Horizon is good. It's fine. It's not in my top 10 PlayStation 4 games. It's not, in my eyes, on the level of like a Ghost or a Last of Us or an Uncharted or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the insistency of like, all right, Horizon 1, Horizon 2, which is fine. Horizon 3 is probably in development. Okay, that's fine. All right, we're going to do Horizon VR. We're going to do Horizon 1 Remaster, which, don't forget, also had the free patch when PS5 launched. So it was already running at 60 frames and looked fine. But now we're going to remaster it again and put it in Horizon 2's engine. All right, we're going to do the rumored Horizon multiplayer game. All right, we're going to do the Horizon MMO. We're going to put Aloy in Fortnite. It's just like, enough.
Stop trying to sell me Horizon.
Stop making fetch a thing. It's not going to be a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want it the first time.
Yeah.
I don't want it again. They're trying to...
Enough.
I feel like they're really trying to make the next mascot for PlayStation. They're trying to make the next Crash. They're trying to make the next...
Nathan Drake.
They're trying to make the next... Nathan Drake is the one I was going to allude to. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Astrobot's already there.
Yeah. And I
Astrobot
think...
is the face of PlayStation 5. And he came out on release, the PS5, with that demo.
Yeah. And I think the only counter to my own thoughts and what you just said there, Vinny, as well, is it's like Horizon's like the Avatar of video games, where it's like you talk to people and it's like, I'm over it. But it sells 20 million copies and outsells most games, most PlayStation games. So I guess they're kind of looking at the numbers and being like, people like Horizon, right? Because it does sell. But it's also like this clear, for me, it feels like a clear bias to like Herman Holst being like, no, like put Aloy in it, or no, let's push Horizon.
But is it selling because people like it, or because it's being pushed?
Yeah, that's a huge. That's like a chicken or the egg thing, really.
Well, like, because the big issue that I have with not Horizon, but the commentary around Horizon is the fact that yes, it's a female-led protagonist. Like that's the idea.
Oh, I don't care about that.
Yeah, but the whole like there's a lot of negative talk about Horizon because Aloy's a woman, and that's the woke agenda and that sort of stuff, which isn't that's not true. Like nobody.
No, I actually before you say that, I think like as I don't like Aloy. Like I think you're right. People do have issues with Aloy, but I think with Horizon, I've never heard the dialogue be because she's a woman. I actually just think Aloy as a character. No, Aloy as a character is boring. She's
boring. Yeah.
She's like there's the world, the gameplay is cool. The whole robot dinosaur is fantastic. I think the first game was good, but Aloy just seems to be very like she doesn't fit in the world in terms of, which is part of the story. I get, but it's very like there's no charisma. There's no. She just seems very bland to me.
See, I don't see the arguments talking about that as the character. I see it coming from the Mary Sue argument, where it's like another Rey Skywalker sort of thing. Like where they're just putting them in, which is not the case.
No.
But that's such
Rey Skywalker's her own terrible thing.
Yeah, but that's such a vocal crowd when talking about these games that now all of a sudden, like I feel like that conversation is no longer about the characters themselves, like the games themselves. It's about the characters just because of arbitrary things that they don't like.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, as you said, Horizon's a good game. Sure, I haven't finished it. I still haven't even gotten out of the open area because I found it boring. Right?
Yeah.
But like that's because I found the game boring. Nothing about the characters or anything like that. But now all of a sudden, I need to catch up on, Horizon 2 and Horizon Remastered and Lego Horizons
and the Prime show. That's
and I've got Aloy in Fortnite. Okay, cool. Like, so what? Like,
yeah.
I think
the funniest thing is like when I think about Horizon when it came out, it's like Breath of the Wild just came out at a similar time, like the original Horizon. And then you think about that, and it's like Link is arguably the most boring character of all time. He doesn't say or do anything. He's got actually no charisma. He's got facial expressions, and that's it. But the gameplay and his legacy is what sells that, that market. And then you have someone who's granted a fantastic open world, similar vibe, definitely like at surface level, similar vibe to Breath of the Wild. Not as you get deeper into it. There's obviously two different things. But if the character is also boring, the other character is arguably boring, but has 30 years of games, you're probably going to go with the latter.
How many conversations do you have as Link in Breath of the Wild? You don't talk.
That's the point.
Exactly.
Aloy talks a lot, and there's a lot of dialogue. And I think, like, the first Horizon I enjoyed, I think, much more because you think about it at that time, this was the Killzone team pivoting. This was something new. It was robot dinosaurs. Like, that first reveal of Horizon Forbidden West was awesome. It was fantastic, and the first game I think is really good. But it a lot of why I liked it was the gameplay and the world and the story it was telling. I just don't think Aloy as a character is very memorable. And for a character that appears in so much, you would want that person to be memorable. You know what I mean?
The outfit's memorable, at least. That's what.
Like she's iconic in terms of the red hair and the design, 100%. But there, like characters like Ali or even they're just like more. I think I can hear her voice. I can describe the character, right? Where it just seems like Aloy was always just like very cold to everybody, regardless of the situation she was in. If it was happy moment or sad moment, she was just stone faced.
I can't tell you a single quote from Nathan Drake though.
It's because you haven't played Uncharted. Anyway, that's another discussion.
I have played Uncharted.
Sully,
Drake, no.
Anyway.